conversation. Like if there's just something going nowhere, I might sit around and listen, but it doesn't really tempt me to participate.
Would you also say that you probably talk more with other people than you do with me because I talk so much?
Of course, that's true. But I also talk a lot more with you than some people.
Okay. So that's another factor to consider is that as an ENTP, when I talk about INTPs not talking that much, it's reflecting my interpretation of a discursive space that I've already mostly filled. So it just tends to limit their ability to contraindicate that. Okay, so Neptune, you're somebody who you're not sure if you are an INTP, if you are an INFJ potentially. I've operated under the assumption you were an INTP for a long time. What do you think?
I prefer conversation where I'm not so eager necessarily to tell people what I know or like state an opinion all the time unless I'm purposefully being provocative. Usually I'd prefer to ask questions and then take other people's perspectives, sit with them for a really long time, and ideally turn it into a diamond. But that diamond never really appears. So I'm constantly just I prefer to take like the observer stance in conversation, which is why I ask so many questions, so that I can have a more like well-rounded opinion of something. So usually it can come off like I'm interrogating someone when really that's my idea of conversation.
What do you guys think about relating to what he's saying regarding questions? Are you more inclined to make statements or ask questions?
It depends, for me at least. I'll ask a lot of questions if I feel like the person that I'm talking to can't take statements, or that I need to be more like, or if it's a topic where I don't feel like I know a lot or I need to ask questions. But if it's something where somebody says something and like I really think it's wrong, or I really like, then I'll just usually speak in statements or in my opinions.
Yeah, I think NTPs tend to be statement makers in general, more than questioners. So that tends to make me lean towards Neptune potentially being an INFJ, who tend to be questioners more than statement makers. Would you guys agree with that general depiction of INTPs and INFJs?
Yeah. I can't agree with that as a generality, no.
ENTPs, any of you guys want to chime in here? If you guys are paying attention, Jacob and or Ace. Is Jacob only playing chat?
Wait, what happened?
I'm asking if either of you guys want to chime in on that.
What, on what? What happened? What was the statement?
Never mind. You weren't paying attention.
No, just hit me. Just repeat. I got it.
Because it's not about a specific statement. It's about this long series of us talking about ENTP and INTP for the last, 10 minutes. And then I said, do you guys want to chime in?
Oh, like the whole thing on like he doesn't want to talk unless he feels like it's interesting to him and people actually want to discuss it. And
INFJ is more likely to be questioners than statement makers.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's a good generalization?
I would say probably so, yeah. Although keep in mind, I am fairly new at MBTI compared to all of you guys.
Hey, Blanky, is that Jessica? Blanky, are you Jessica?
I don't know. I find with INFJs that I know of, like, yeah, they're super inquisitive when they're trying to get to know somebody at first, or when they're kind of like the whole maybe first couple months you know them, or if you're talking to them about some emotional problem you have or some situation in your life, or you're maybe asking for advice or something. But otherwise, if you say something and they have kind of a TI framework about it, they're not scared. They're usually, in my opinion, usually pretty blunt about stating their like how they feel about something or how they view something. Or I don't know.
And I feel like NI would be a more certain. There would be more certainty to NI dominance than TI. So I can't say that the questioning thing is necessarily NI NFJ versus INTP thing. I can't say which, because from my observation, NI is more confident in itself than TI.
Well, that's true.
Because
I mean,
even INTPs tend to be type 5s in Enneagram, which is the person who hoards information because they never feel like they're prepared or have the right conclusion.
right. I mean, I think the risk of TI is to devolve into nihilism. The risk of NI is to become Hitler. So, it's they move in opposite directions in that regard. TI defeats itself in terms of certainty, and NI reinforces itself. But see, NI isn't really a way of making judgments so much as it is a way of knowing things. But as a way of knowing things, it's very judgy because it's about knowing.
I was gonna say,
true.
I kind of like hate. I know you weren't saying this, but I kind of hate that depiction of NI because you can't separate NI from other things. Like, so it's always tied to a judging function. So like when I run it into NI DOMs, usually they have way stronger opinions on things than I do, even though I'm a judging DOM. But like a lot of the time I see that they have this worldview that they've created, and they've created it over a long period of time, like their whole life. They've just built building blocks and deconstruction of how they view the world or how they view something, and it's like, and they're pretty strong in those opinions. Usually that's what I run into. I don't know, like I wouldn't say I have ideas and opinions about things and about stuff, but I wouldn't say, I don't feel like I have such a strong worldview as I run into a lot with NI DOMs.
Well, I think the reason is because our respective epistemologies focus on different things. So SI, which we use, it's about remembering what happened before and about constructing an event chain in time related to the self and stuff like that. And SI allows itself to be, SI, especially tied with TI above FE, means that you know clearly that past experience is not always a good guide for future outcomes, and that you may be able to use SI to guide you based on reference points from the past and stuff you've learned. But you also know that it's an imperfect system. NI, in contrast, knows what's true and right and obvious and certain, and it's almost always right. It involves things that it pairs a lot with SE. That's why it's paired with SE, because you know something and it's pre-action knowledge. It's pre-knowledge. It's a shit you know without thinking it through at all. So it's like the example I like to use for NI is when I was in the car and this car in front of me, I knew I was in a bad spot because he looked like he's got the feeling that he might want to come over. I was in probably his blind spot, and I was going at a speed that was sort of getting up past his bumper, but it's really slowly. And so I was in a bad spot to be doing something, not because I had any indication anything bad was going to happen, but just sort of a sense that, oh, this is dumb because he's going to come over here. And so then I ended up slowing down and going around him or whatever. But the point is, I knew all that without thinking any of it through. I just sort of got the gist of this situation, this complicated situation of variables in the car, and then I SE took action on it. That's the way that epistemology and action function work together to almost bypass the judging functions. Whereas TI is the exact opposite of that. TI goes, let me make sure I got all this first. Make sure I understand why I need to slow down and go over here and come over and pass this guy before I actually do anything. It's deliberative rather than reactive or active.
Yeah. I guess it's hard for me, or just using that specific example, it's hard for me to kind of agree, I guess, just because like I'm really physically active and like very physically inclined with whatever it is, driving, sports, whatever it may be. So I don't see TI as a problem there, and that as something that like hinders me or like where I'm always questioning something. I don't know. I'm just using your specific example.
I'm just saying, in that instance, you're not using TI. If you were using TI, it would be a bad time to use it, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying in that instant, yes. Yeah.
So the reason that NI is more certain than TI is because NI doesn't stop to think about it. But NI, it's wrong. I think it's wrong to compare them because NI is, like I said, I think more of an epistemology, and I think TI is an evaluatory function. NI doesn't question its own conclusions at all, but TI does. And even FI would go like, well, I might feel differently later. FE acknowledges the wobbliness in its interpretation of things. But our epistemologies, SI and NI, they don't function with an understanding of wobbliness. They don't say, well, my memory might be wrong. You operate on the assumption your memory is right for most things. I mean, there might be some things that you factor in. Well, that was a long time ago. I don't really remember that clearly. But for most obvious things, like I remember that I saw Folgers on the shelf at the Circle K when I thought they didn't sell ground coffee. I noted one time, last time I went down there, I was like, oh, they do sell ground coffee. There it is. And I remember that, right? So next time if I run out of coffee and I want to go to Circle K and get grounds, I'm going to go, they do have them. And I won't sit there and go, is my memory of this correct?
Mm-hmm.
You know, NI works the same way, except it's about truth and right and beauty and stuff like that. And so that's why it's kind of judgy or something. That's what I think anyway.
I get what you're saying there. It's definitely harder to articulate, a little bit harder to give examples for NI because it's not as tangible.
Right. SI is the physical epistemology, and NI is the metaphysical epistemology. So it's like we have three metaphysicals and one physical. And physical for ENTP is in the fourth slot. So that's why we're just such a mess in the physical world in all capacities. Whether it be TE, SE, or whatever, or SI, you know. Our way of knowing the physical world is we attend to it very little.
Are we still recording our INTP, ENTP differences?
Yeah.
Okay.
So somebody wrap it up. Give me a nice summary. Susie, provide us a summation.
Start talking about ENTP.
Damn!
Start.
Hit him with it, Suze!
Start or stop?
You never said anything. You just kept going about INTP.
And then NI.
INFJ. I talked about INFJ too.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That long rant was mostly about NI and SI.
And SI. It's relevant, I guess. But okay, INTP has NI. A lot of them will claim to be very NI heavy. And I think, in a sense, they are because they're trying to focus on the right moment, the exact right action in a given moment to make a singular stroke of the sword to do the damage that ENTP does, going like chop, 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 right? That's sort of the INTP at their optimal state is accomplishing the same things the ENTP is accomplishing with a lot less energy. At their least optimal state, they're waiting too long and not pulling the trigger when they should. And then in that point, you know, they get. I think some INTPs sort of get behind the eight ball and start neurosizing out about shit rather than just pulling the trigger on shit. But I mean, I don't think either of you guys fit into that category at all. I think both of you guys are pretty well optimized. You seem to have gotten past whatever 7th slot SE normally can render some INTPs like